Hello, welcome to episode 189 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1,001 movies you must see before you die. The wrapping up of our little mini-series of comedy icons that kind of got disrupted halfway through with that kind of Harold Lloyd mishap where I thought that Safety Last was in the book and it wasn't. So we talked about a W.C. Fields film. We're going to round this off. We've talked about Buster Keaton, we've talked about Charlie Chaplin, talked about Laurel and Hardy. Now I'm going to talk about the Marx Brothers. Now, I'd never seen a single frame of a Marx Brothers film before, and of course we're talking about Duck Soup from 1933. My knowledge on the Marx Brothers was really limited to the Groucho Marx, glasses and mustache. Like that was it really. I didn't know anything about them, what their style of comedy was, who the brothers were, how they played into anything. So I sat down with Duck Soup, and like Connie has joined me through most of these movies in the little mini comedy series, I wanted her to watch the Marx Brothers too. And within 10 minutes, I said, if you want to back out, it's cool by me. And she said, yeah. So we just stopped watching. The first 10 minutes of Duck Soup, I was not a fan at all. I really found it unfunny. I found it was trying too hard. It was shrill, annoying. The musical number just bothered me. Wasn't a fan whatsoever. I just thought, wow, this really isn't for me. So a couple of days later, I sat down and watched it, in full myself. And I really liked it. It was really good. I didn't love it. I feel like I need to be accustomed and kind of get into the style of the Marx Brothers and know what I'm going to get out of a Marx Brothers film before I watch it. Sometimes just diving in blind, you're not setting yourself up for a good viewing experience, I don't feel. And watching that opening again, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit more. Not too much, I still think it's not great, but as the film wore on, and we met the other Marx Brothers, namely Harpo and Chico. Zeppo is kind of the odd one out. He's the fourth Marx brother who is not wild or wacky at all. He's very much the straight man, and I didn't really find much in him at all. I didn't realize that he was one of the Marx brothers until the very end of the film. I thought, okay. But Harpo and Chico and Groucho have all distinct characteristics, and Groucho is that wisecracker. He's the guy who has those mile-a-minute lines, and he's always on to the next gag before he's even finished the first one. Then you have Chico, who's this exaggerated Italian character who's always mispronouncing words and doing jokes and gags based on wordplay. Have you got a license to do that? No, my dog's got loads of lice, that kind of stuff. And then we have Harpo, who was probably my favorite because he is this, at the time, I guess you couldn't really say throwback, but, he was still stuck in the silent era. He does not have a word of dialogue, but he still is hilarious. Very much this mime artist, and very, of the 3 or 4, the wackiest, I think, with all the gags that he does, all based on physical slapstick and so on, but really clever stuff too. And I did grow to enjoy Groucho's kind of gig too, his act, his style, his way of approaching comedy, and there's a lot of great lines in the film, but I didn't really find myself laughing at it too much, I have to say. I then watched the movie again with a commentary with, I guess, a scholar on the Marx Brothers and also the critic Leonard Maltin, and that gave me a bit more of a perspective on them too. I watched some of the special features on the Blu-ray, and so I got a feeling of their history and what they were about. And the film Duck Soup, I don't know if I should even get into the plot, is about the ruler of the fictional country Fredonia, played by Groucho Marx, Rufus T. Firefly. And he's just this, he's just this average Joe who's been elected to be the president of this country. And it is very much seen as a political satire, and you can very much look at it like that. But from what I've heard in the commentary and watched on the special features, this wasn't really meant to be a political film from the Marx Brothers. It was just a comedy, And they certainly didn't imagine that their films would have the longevity that they've had and that people like me would be talking about them 90 years, 80 years after those films were made and released. And I think this was the last of the 4 Marx Brothers before Zeppo left the act. But yeah, I enjoyed Harpo the most. I grew to love Groucho's style, and I thought Chico was very funny too. The highlight of the movie to me, and again, not worth going into the plot too much because it really is this kind of wacky, just anarchistic kind of, just wild comedy movie where anything goes and not much really needs to make sense. It has a plot, but it's very threadbare. And my favorite part of the film was when Chico and Harpo are trying to infiltrate Groucho's house. Oh no, he's staying at someone's house, and there's some papers that's to do with this political situation, and they need to get the papers. And so they end up, all three of them, all dressed like Groucho at one point, running around the house. And there's a fantastic sequence where Harpo, dressed as Groucho, runs into a mirror, it smashes, he walks through to the other side, then Groucho turns up, and they're both looking at each other between this kind of gap and, you know, where a mirror had been, and they're kind of doing that kind of mime double act. Now, I wanted to get Connie involved in this in some way, and it didn't really pan out the way I'd hoped, so I showed her the mirror scene, which I thought was fantastic. It was so brilliantly done. The sense of timing was brilliant by both Groucho and Harpo, and they just executed this comedy bit to perfection. And it had probably been done before and would be done later as well, but to me, I thought that it was just sublime, just really, really funny. Like, the best part of the film by far. Just when you can make someone laugh just by an expression, you know, that's when you know you've done something really funny. Anyway, here's Connie's thoughts on the mirror scene. Okay, so as I mentioned, Connie didn't sit through the entirety of Duck Soup, and I don't blame her at all. I still think that opening is a bit not very funny, but I did show her the mirror sequence, which I was talking about. So, do you have any thoughts on that after seeing it?
Well, when you talked about it, I was picturing it to be, like, perfectly synced, so I'm really disappointed, actually.
It's pretty good, though. It's pretty, you know...
Yeah, they could have done better.
Oh, wow, okay. This is interesting.
I probably could have done better if I had two of me.
Shut up. Well, if anyone had two of them. But there's two guys, well, okay.
We could have rehearsed something pretty good. It seemed to me like some of it was, like, improvised on the day.
Right, yeah.
Like, it was like watching a high school dance where they're kind of in sync. But if they're just a little bit after, it kind of destroys the thing.
Okay.
Some of the shots were better than others, but I thought they would be better.
Okay.
Because they looked so similar. They put so much time into looking so similar. In
well, they were brothers. Well, I guess this kind of cements the fact that it probably wouldn't have been worth your time to watch the whole film then if that didn't pressure you as much.
And it dragged on for a bit too.
I thought it was perfectly done. I really liked it. And you know when they say it goes out of sync, I think towards the end it kind of goes out of sync a little bit because
no, it's in the beginning too.
I think it's more towards the end because it's almost like they both realise. Anyway, I thought you would have liked that more than you did.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, I just thought I would try and show her, in my opinion, the best scene and see what she thought of it, and throw that in there, seeing as you've been talking about the other films.
I mean, it was creative and everything. It's just the syncness.
That's fair enough. All I want is your honest opinion. You definitely gave that, so there we go. On with the rest of my review. Yeah, so she wasn't a big fan of it. Well, she liked it, but she was very analytical about it, and that's completely fair enough. I mean, there's two modes of thinking that, you know, okay, I'm going to look at this from the perspective of now and things that have been done now, and there probably are people now who could do that mirror gag much more smoother and in much better kind of synchronicity than those two did. Then there's that mode of thinking of, well, this was like the early days of cinema and they were able to do something like this, but I guess you can kind of mix both of those modes of thinking around as well. To me, I just thought it was great, even if there were kind of little cracks in there, you know, little bits where they weren't perfectly matched. The spirit of it and the performance of it, it wasn't just about how in sync they were, it was how they were acting while in sync that made it so funny. So that was by far my favourite. I loved the ending, which just went completely batshit crazy with missiles flying through the walls and just, you know, Groucho wearing a different outfit in every other, you know, take, like, just completely wild and very funny. Didn't make me laugh out loud as much as, say, a Buster Keaton film or even a Laurel and Hardy film, but I appreciated it. And this has definitely been kind of my dipping of the toes into the Marx Brothers filmography, into the Marx Brothers experience, and later on I'll check out their other films and I'll have more of a grounded kind of understanding of where they're coming from, what to expect when I watch the further films that I haven't seen yet, which is any but Duck Soup, obviously. I think that one more is in the book, Night at the Opera, so I'll be talking about the Marx Brothers again in the Epic Film Challenge 2. But for now, is it a film you should see before you die? I think it is. I think it's a great comedy. It didn't make me laugh very much, but I could appreciate the gags, and once I stuck it out, I really saw how good of a film it was and how funny it was and how it wasn't really relying too much on the plot. And yeah, it is, you know, very much a string of gags kind of strung along by a plot, but so is Buster Keaton movies in a lot of ways. You know, that's kind of what most comedy movies are in a lot of sense, but especially back then. So I don't think that really takes away from anything, and it is seen as this classic. A lot of people talk about it, and for me it's a film you should see before you die, because if you get the Marx Brothers specific brand of comedy, and if that'll make you laugh, then this film will have you in stitches, and so it is so worth checking out. It's only an hour and 9 minutes long, so for me it is absolutely a film you should see before you die, and one that I think that I will grow to enjoy more and more the more times I watch it. So thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts on the Marx Brothers down below, or Duck Soup, whatever you want to talk about, and I'll see you in the next one.